Board, this evening I present for your review the budget for the 2021 school year. Let me just kind of give you a Reader's Digest version, be happy to answer any questions you may have, but as you all recall, last spring, the tax notices went out late, and it ended up having an impact on our finances last school year. I had budgeted for around $69 million in local property tax collections. We were probably on target to get around 70, but because the notices went out late, we only got around 65. So I anticipate that not being the case this year, but I have just budgeted basically a normal year, which if I'd gotten 70 last year plus the growth in our assessment would put me around 72. So that's what I've budgeted for local property taxes. In the event that they go out early next spring, then we could end up having more revenue in this year than normal. So that's the bulk of the revenue increase that I have budgeted in the budget for you. You will notice I did not budget for student growth, and since our numbers are down, it doesn't look like we'll be getting any. And then another thing that I did not budget this year is catastrophic occurrence. That's the reimbursement we receive for our high-cost children. That would be a children that requires a one-on-one aid, for example, and has to be transported, things of that nature. We never know from year to year how much of that we're going to be reimbursed. And so this year I just took a very conservative approach and just pretended like I'm not going to get any, because that way I'll be grateful for what I get. Last year I budgeted around $750 and we only got $500,000, and that was not a good place to be. So it all depends on how many schools submit for reimbursement. They have a set amount of dollars. The more people that go to the pie, the smaller the piece of pie. So that's a change that I made this year. And then there was one other thing I was going to, because we didn't do high stakes testing last spring, there is no school recognition money that will be rewarded this year. So we won't be receiving any of that, so I don't have that budgeted either. So that's a revenue synopsis. Any questions on that? Okay. Moving on to expenditures. The expenditures I have budgeted up quite a bit. That is typical. We have to budget what is carried over in the categorical funds, and we had around $4.5 million carried forward. So I don't anticipate spending all of that, obviously. So the expenses are a little aggressive, I guess you would say. We will not. Typically, we have not spent all that we have budgeted for expenditures. So other than that, any specific questions you have? You did probably notice the federal grants summary. We do have the new federal grants of the ESSER funds of $4 million. That's new for us this year. And so basically that's the only difference in our federal grants.
Is your revenue number based on the 21,150 that we're at right now, or based on?
Thank you for asking me that. All of our funding every year, with the exception of student growth and English language learner funding, is based on prior year. So all of our money this year that I'm working with is based on last year's number.
So it's based on the 22,100.
That's correct.
So if we only end up with 21,100, we're going to be about 10 million short.
Next year.
Next year. Okay.
Next year. It will hit us next year.
Okay.
There is a declining enrollment funding, which I've never received, never had done anything with that, but it basically holds you harmless for half of the students that you lose. So the net effect would be half of the students. Okay. But yes, if our enrollment does not reach what it was this last year, then we will have a reduction in state aid next year.
Unless there's some special action by the state.
Right. And hopefully they'll increase the amount per student. That'll help offset some of it as well.
So you basically have one more year until you enter no man's land. Kind of some unknowns with what this potential impact is financially.
That's correct. The only thing that'll hit us this year would be if our English language
Right.
learners, the number of those students drops significantly. Yeah. That's a great question, thank you.
And we're still not positive how the 70%
Right.
free and reduced, we don't know how
Once
that's gonna
again-
play out yet.
Once again, no, failed to mention earlier that they have extended the deadline for us for this year till October 15th. So it's normally October 1 we have to be there, so we do have a couple more weeks to get there. But yes, that is a year behind as well. So if we don't reach it, then that will impact us next year. And if y'all recall, when we first were at the 8 million and then we started marching our way up, it took us 3 years to get to the 16.
Right.
It works the same way. If you don't hit it, you don't lose all 8 million. You just lose a third of the 8 million, but we don't want to do that either. So,
Right.
Si-
Okay.
Since our pre-K numbers are not as high as we had anticipated, does that affect any of the grants that we?
it does. We, one of our grants, the Endeavor Foundation was one of the funding sources. This was going to be the last year for that funding source. So regretfully, we declined that grant for this year because we were going to have to eliminate 11 classrooms funded by that grant the following year anyway. And that made more sense to eliminate that grant than one of the other grants that is ongoing. One of the other grants is based on the number of students attending, so it will automatically reduce based on our enrollment numbers.
Okay. Any other questions? Is there a motion to accept the budget?
I'd make a motion to accept the 2021 proposed budget.
A second.
There's a motion by Mr. Owenby, a second by Mr. Bell to accept the 2020-2021 fiscal year budget. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you.